Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My good viewers and my wonderful audience whom I have been addressing for the last couple of weeks. Your host, Salahuddin Chaudhry, in the YouTube channel Penta-S, in the segment Sad Soul. Today, 29th August 2021, and it is a special day, a day which is worth remembering. Designated by the United Nations as the International Day Against Nuclear Tests. An international day designated by the United Nations as the International Day Against Nuclear Tests, 29th August. It's a very serious subject. As a matter of fact, as I deal with it and give you a talk, I hope there will be no reason for you and for me to enter into any kind of controversies. Before I begin, I would like to mention to you that when I was in the Foreign Office, I was involved with this particular subject, with the disarmament cell. Mind you, disarmament is a very important subject for all countries in the world. And as I give my narrative, I would like to invite your attention to my earlier talks or narratives on the International Day of Fashion Show or Fashion Designing. And that fashion designing, mind you, is something that which you all heard from me sounded very interesting and very, very inspiring. Although fashion designing is one kind, it's all about life, it's all about how you conduct yourself in life, all about how you dress, how you make up, and how you, as I said, conduct yourself in the daily affairs of life. However, fashion designing, is very important element, the designing bit. In the same context, designing is also a part of the plans and strategies that we develop in the different very, very important institutions, particularly the Foreign Office and also the Parliament, where designs of one kind or the other does get involved in developing a particular plan and a strategy. In that context, it is also a kind of designing. Call it nuclear energy, call it any other energy, call it weaponry, call it any other matter concerning this. Now, for my narrative, I will begin with a small preamble. I say, and I must request you and urge you to try and see what I'm trying to make, what points I'm trying to make. In our life, in our world, the guns and weapons of any kind, anywhere in our world, as I said earlier, are simply means to violence coming from one cause or the other. Prevalence of weapons simply can prompt easy violent reaction, logic or no logic, with or without rationale. Any means in the hand, any means, be it a knife, a dagger, a pistol, or an arrow. can become the source of attack, whatever the circumstance. A spur of the moment action causing harm may be remorseful but cannot be undone. It can be anybody involved in a sudden situation, because afflictions are simply human. Human who errs often inexplicably. As you all know, there's a very famous proverb or a maxim. It says, to err is human. Every human being makes mistakes, and that is erring. You make an error. So, afflictions are simply human who errs often without notice, without understanding. Therefore, in simple words, a man can become trigger happy if the weapon, small, big, sharp, mega, or explosives laden, and when the weapon is handy or procurable. Whether the weapon is causer of small size or mass destruction, it is all the same, lethal and killer. So a weapon of any kind can be lethal and also a killer, depends how you use it. When this is seen with the aforesaid hindsight, one can somewhat feel pretty strongly how dangerous a weapon can be with nuclear capability. This is a kind of tragedy described euphemistically that the human race can cause to humanity in terms of acquisition of weapons, or rather weapons-grade atomic power, which simply is metaphorically human wiper, wipes humanity, and not a deterrence to stop human wiping. It sounds strange, because deter means you deter somebody away. But human wiping by one weapon, big weapon of mass destruction, can be non-ending. It can wipe out the whole humanity of a particular place. If, of course, a high-tech security is not in place. So high-tech security is very important to be able to keep a tab and control over the weapons of destruction. Whether in science laboratory or externally, testing is an inherent phenomenon. During the course of experimentation, accidents occur which are not preconceived, mainly because the outcome has yet to be seen. This is as much true for nuclear-related manufacturing that invariably leads to testing. And weapons-grade nuclear tests have for long been a mainstay for evaluation, research, and finality. And paradoxically, servicemen often played the role of guinea pigs in the first decades of nuclear testing. What a tragedy, what a shame. According to a Buddhist anti-nuclear peace activist, so long as nuclear weapons continue to exist, well, this sounds anathema, sounds very, very despairing. He says, so long as nuclear weapons continue to exist, so will the temptation to threaten others with overwhelming military force. Well, like it not, perhaps it is the truth. Well, on 2nd December 2009, in this context, which is a redeeming factor, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously declared 29 August as the International Day Against Nuclear Tests. This day was proposed by Kazakhstan as it marks both the closure of the former Soviet Semipalatinsk test site in 1991 Soviet. It was situated in the Soviet Union at that time, small town. Semipalatinsk test site. Okay? And the date of the first Soviet nuclear test conducted there in 1949. Soviet Union at that time before its breakup in 1992. The UNGA resolution aims to prevent more of the devastating and harmful effects on the lives and health of people and the environment caused by nuclear testing, and in particular calls for increasing awareness and education about the effects of nuclear weapon test, explosions, or any other explosions, and the need for their cessation as one of the means of achieving the goal of a nuclear weapon-free world. Whether it is possible or not remains to be seen for the posterity. The resolution was initiated by the Republic of Kazakhstan, as said earlier, together with a large number of sponsors and co-sponsors with a view to commemorating the closure of the Soviet nuclear test site, as I said earlier, on the 29th of August 1991. Over 2,000 nuclear tests have been since conducted. The very first nuclear explosion, the Trinity test on 16 July 1945 in New Mexico of the US, the fallout from these tests being limitless radioactivity released into the environment. What a shame. Pitiable. The servicemen involved and people living close to the test sites often paid with their health, some even with their lives. Some of the world's over 60 nuclear test sites continue to be contaminated. Again, pitiful tragedy. Fallout from the mushroom clouds above ground and explosions below ground did severe damage over time on the surrounding populations, especially in the town of Semipalatinsk, now called Semi, A-C-M-E-Y, Semi, in the former Soviet Union, almost 100 miles east of the site, the main site. Radiation levels are still as much as 10 times higher in the soil and water near the town, and babies were born with deformities during and after the period of testing. Oh, terrible. I shudder. I really shudder. Cancer leveled the population. More than half of the town does not live to 60, and the fallout further caused cancer, leukemia, sterility, and mutations in later generations. But regrettably, underground testing continued at Semipalatinsk until 1989. Again, nobody to answer. Very shameful. Who will question? Was there anybody to question that particular country? No. Eventually, an anti-nuclear movement called Nevada Semipalatinsk grew by the same name of the town, bringing thousands to its protestations against the nuclear site in 1989, in a serious tragedy causing long-term radiation poisoning and atmospheric damage. Nuclear testing also poisoned political environment, leading to an arms race with ever more destructive weapons. The world, of course, would recall the colossal material and human devastation following the US dropping of first atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two very important large cities of Japan, and it was done consecutively on 2 days very close to each other, 6th and 9th of August, in this particular month, the month of August, and 29th of August, a special day. Okay? So, that will be remembered because it was just toward the end of the World War II. History will not forget this with awe and condemnation, to remember with awe and condemnation, and never forgive the then American leadership for the big tragedy and genocide, human loss. Since 2010 marks the inaugural commemoration of the International Day Against Nuclear Tests, the day has been observed by coordinating various activities throughout the world. This is interesting and very hopeful, such as symposia, conferences, exhibits, competitions, publications, lectures, media broadcasts, and other initiatives. Since its establishment, many bilateral and multilateral governmental developments as well as broad movements in civil society have helped to advance the cause of banning nuclear tests. Banning nuclear tests. Important. Very, very important. Luckily, following the establishment of the International Day Against Nuclear Tests, in May 2010, all state parties to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, that is NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, okay, committed themselves to achieve peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons. It didn't happen though. It doesn't happen now. And God knows what will happen in the future also. The tests are almost no more, but nuclear proliferation is unabated, with resultant killer radiation polluting air and affecting health. However, since its establishment, many bilateral and multilateral governmental developments as well as broad movements in civil society have helped to advance the cause of banning nuclear tests. This is the subject of today, my narrative. In the early days of nuclear testing, little consideration was given to its devastating effects on human life, let alone the dangers of nuclear fallout from atmospheric tests. Atmospheric tests, mind you, the tests which are done in the atmosphere are much more dangerous. Okay. Hindsight and history have shown us the terrifying and tragic effects of nuclear weapons testing, especially when controlled conditions go away or go awry, and in light of the far more powerful and destructive nuclear weapons that exist today. Very unfortunate, very despairing. Convinced that nuclear disarmament and the total elimination of nuclear weapons are the only absolute guarantee against the use of threat or any threat of nuclear weapons, the General Assembly of the United Nations designated another day, the day of 26 September as the International Day for the total elimination of nuclear weapons. Total elimination of nuclear weapons. Well, it was the strategy, the plan. Many countries together, devised them with the hope that it might happen or it will happen. But we're yet to see whether it is going to happen. Probably our posterity, our future, our young boys and girls of today, when they grow up, they become citizens of the country. Maybe they will one day see the real resultant. Well, every effort needs to be made to ensure the entry into force of the CTBT, that is the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. And it is hoped that one day all nuclear weapons will be eliminated, as I said earlier, with all the hope. Until then, there is a need to observe International Day Against Nuclear Tests like it is today, as the world works towards promoting peace and security. The main mechanism for eradicating nuclear weapons testing is the CTBT, as said earlier. It was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on 10th of September 1996. To date, till today, 184 countries have signed the treaty and 168 have ratified it. For the treaty to enter into force, it must be ratified by those states with significant nuclear capabilities. Pakistan tested in May 1998 its first nuclear bomb or nuclear test. Shortly after, India did. Purely as a deterrence, Pakistan did. And no tests since then by Pakistan. And it seems it will happen one day when both the countries will sign NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, and CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. While the general consensus within the international community is that nuclear weapons tests pose life-threatening risks, there still exists, to some degree, a lingering suspicion of the possibility of clandestine nuclear weapons testing. Unfortunate. I hope it is not happening, but it is happening. Nothing can play as crucial a role in avoiding a nuclear war or nuclear terrorist threat as the total elimination of nuclear weapons. Bringing an irreversible end to nuclear explosions will prevent the further development of nuclear weapons. From the beginning of the nuclear age, civil society has played a prominent role in the effort to permanently halt testing of nuclear weapons. Physicists, seismologists, and other scientists, physicians, and lawyers, women's organizations, research institutes, and disarmament NGOs, mayors and parliamentarians, downwinders exposed to radioactive contaminants resulting from atmospheric testing, and the hibakusha, in the Japanese word, hibakusha, the survivors of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the wider public, all have been involved in these efforts. They're trying very hard, very, very hard. And I hope they and we all continue very hard. To help the CTBT into force, NGOs, civil society, and members of the public, especially in those countries that must ratify the treaty for it to enter into force, can urge their governments and parliaments to sign and ratify the treaty. They can also urge them to endorse the Secretary General's 5-point proposal for nuclear disarmament, which includes bringing the CTBT into force. The CTBT is the international instrument to end all nuclear testing in a verifiable way. Nuclear testing has essentially screeched to a halt with the adoption of the CTBT in 1996, which forged an international zero-tolerance stance against nuclear testing. Currently, 183 states signed the treaty and 162 have ratified it. Well, I don't know, it just a repetition. However, for the CTBT to enter into force, 8 other states from a list of 44 defined as nuclear technology holders have yet to ratify to meet the treaty's stringent entry into force requirement. I'm repeating this because, my dear viewers, this is important. This is really, really important that other countries follow suit. And if they don't, CTBT will not come into effect. And that is the key for completely eliminating any prospects of nuclear testing. That is nuclear weapons or nuclear arms testing. Well, in this context, at the end, I would like to quote our UN Secretary General Guterres. He said, our collective security demands that every effort should be made to bring this essential treaty into force. He almost begged to the whole world, we got to do it, we got to do it, we got to do it. The International Day Against Nuclear Tests, ladies and gentlemen, my very good viewers, seeks to raise awareness about the negative effects of nuclear weapons and the need to achieve a nuclear weapon-free world. The day also serves to educate people everywhere about the need to ban nuclear weapon tests in order to ensure world safety. Well, my dear viewers, before I close, I would like to tell you and point out that Pakistan as a subject in this context of nuclear energy, nuclear power, nuclear testing, CTBT, NPT, etc., will figure in my coming session on 26th of September, which is a day called International Day for the Elimination of Nuclear Weapons. That's another day. So I'll talk about it again to you. I hope you'll be looking forward to that. It is a serious subject, but extremely important and interesting, although it may not be as inspiring. But knowledge is important. In the end, I would like to emphasize, reiterate, and urge you, think and think and think, and try to acquire as much information and knowledge about the subject. And I would say, let us all on our beautiful planet, let us all on our beautiful planet, let all countries and nations pause, think, and take the path of wisdom. Let all countries and nations of the world pause, think, and take the path of wisdom, the path to security, germ and virus-free health, harmony and friendship for all, malice to none. As a policy, friendship to all, malice to none. Like I said earlier in one of my sessions, friendship to all, malice to none, toward the making of peace for humanity the world over.